Wagwan, everybody. Welcome to the Dis Affamie History podcast, where we'll be speaking about history and as well family history and how history relates in terms of Caribbean people for the present as well as in the past, and how in the past what that does and brings forth for what we are going through at present and what we can learn from our history, from our family, and take that moving forward. So I do hope you enjoy the podcast. And if you like it, please ensure to subscribe, like, and review. Thank you.
Our guest today is Amisa Zanabu Bakuri, who is a postdoctoral fellow at the Faculty of Religion and Theology, Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam. Her research focuses on religion, well-being, slavery, and colonialism. So let's have a listen with your host, Wendy Aris, and postdoctoral fellow, Amisa Zanabu Bakuri.
So much, Amisa, for coming on to the podcast today to speak about your article, Black and White in the Church. And I know that we were talking before that we had started that, this is a theme that's not very talked about very much, but I'm glad that we can be able to have this opportunity to speak about it. So before we start, I'll have you just do a brief introduction and then we'll get started.
Okay, an introduction. Where do I start from? My name is Amisa Zanabu Bakuri. I'm of Ghanaian origin. So I'm originally a Ghanaian. I live in the Netherlands. I've lived in the Netherlands since 2012. So that's 12 years now. And I was trained as a historian, and then I did international relations, and I did political science, and I did anthropology, and now I'm working in the Faculty of Religion. So I have an interdisciplinary background, and in my research, I bring all these backgrounds together.
Okay.
I'm a mother with 3 kids, and I'm married, and I'm a Christian.
Oh, perfect. No, thank you so much for that. And then now we'll start. And with your article, Black and White in the Church, the Legacy of Slavery and Colonialism, what was your why to explore this particular theme?
Okay, so there are various reasons why I wanted to explore it. First, from a very personal perspective, as I told you, I'm Ghanaian, so I'm people will not see me since the podcast, but I'm a Black woman, and I live in a white-dominated space. I've experienced all kinds of racism before. I'm not saying that racism is like the overarching thing that I've experienced, because I've experienced a lot of beautiful things, but for context and for this. So I also work with since I moved to the Netherlands, my work has focused on migrants and mostly Black migrants. So the experiences that people told me, and sometimes it felt very personal and also troubling as a mom, like, it's just, what does this look like? So it comes from a very personal perspective, but also it's a professional experience for me, because I'm a researcher and I focus on people's everyday experiences. So this was the reason. And also recently, the Netherlands, just to set the context, the Netherlands has been doing a lot of work on trying to understand historical legacies.
Mm-hmm.
And so trying to understand this also doesn't go to only social, economic realms alone, educational and all that, is also religiously. And so there have been a lot of research coming up in this area. And as a research that focuses on this and have heard stories about this, I was like, it is important for me to bring all this together in a way for us to talk about what inclusivity means, but also about that's not only in the context of because whenever that is talked about, the context of religion seems to be left out. So I feel like what happens in churches, so especially when there are Black people, when there are white people, is it all nice? Because at least from the Bible is like live in unity, love and all those things? Is it like that? And if it's not, what can we do? So the whole idea was not to find like faults or something, but to rather see how we can promote inclusivity and unity within the church, which is something that the church aims to do anyway. So just to, yeah.
No, that's great. And then what would you say was the role that was played by religious institutions in slavery and their impact?
Religious institutions, they have this love-hate relationship with slavery. And it's very complex and it's quite contradictory as well, because some religious leaders actually justified slavery, and some religious institutions use the Bible to justify slavery, citing certain biblical quotations. So the case of Ham, for example, if you read Genesis 9:22 to 29, I think I'm correct. I don't have it offhand, but that quotation has been used a lot to justify differences between races and to even justify the transatlantic slave trade. And another thing is that some religious organizations or churches or institutions have also provided moral framework and ethical support to slavery. So I don't know if you've heard about Jacobus Kapitein. I'm so familiar with him also because he was of Ghanaian heritage. So at 8 years, he moved to the not moved. He was brought to the Netherlands, and he became as a slave, and he became a priest, and he actually really justified slavery and said it was good for Black people to be enslaved. And whilst the story itself is a bit complex because there is a lot of nuances in it, I mean, one side is taken and is used as a moral legitimization of slave trade. And some of them also supported and participated in the institution of slavery. So churches, monasteries, religious colleges, and use slave labor to maintain and build their properties. So this is some of the things. But as I said, this is complex. So we cannot only talk about those who supported it, but there were also religious institutions that were abolitionists, right? Like the Quakers and others and other groups. So there were lots of groups also that were also speaking against slavery and also using moral arguments to say that human dignity is important to God and the worth of every individual is created in the image of God. So if we're all created in the image of God, we should be created equally. We should be treated equally. So there should be equality, equity, and no one is beneath the other. So that's why I'm saying that the role of religious institution is complex, not so simple for us to say they were all for or against. But it is good for us to talk about this so that we see the nuance and we see what role did they play and what can be done now. Is there a lasting impact? Is there an enduring impact? What is that now?
No, for sure, because it is, as you said, it is very complex. There's many layers to this, but as I said, as long as we can have that conversation. And how would you say, like, how have these historical legacies influenced the dynamics between Black and white congregants within churches today?
So I wish I could give you like direct answers to this. And I am an anthropologist, so I speak to people. And so I usually use people's stories to make a point. And but I would like to say that historical legacies has an impact today in the churches as well, because if we realize that, I also told you I'm a historian, I'm not too sure how historical I should go, how anthropological I should go, how religious I should go because of my interdisciplinary background, but I'm trying to combine all this and make it as simple as possible. So we know of historical segregation. racial segregation in churches lasted for a long time during transatlantic slave trade. And because of that enduring divide, some people don't feel comfortable. And this division between congregants is still reflecting on what we see today. And also sometimes people feel a bit of discomfort. And I remember someone telling me that when he was in a particular church, and then anytime he goes, he finds that no one says, this is a Black person. My work is on Black people anyway. And he found that people hardly sat by him. And then after coffee, after church service, they'll usually have coffee time and all that. And the interaction with him was quite less. And he was like, maybe I'm not accepted. And whilst I cannot give you the exact context, the context is important about what this experience meant, it played the roles like, well, maybe I'm not accepted here. So the legacy of segregation and division, whilst that might not be the reason, it may create impressions for people. And also, it also creates trust and reconciliation issues because segregation and division actually fostered mistrust among Black congregants towards predominantly white churches and religious organizations. So it's those kind of things and the economic disparities that slavery created and all that. So I would say that the influence of historical legacies on dynamics between Black and white congregants in churches today is still there because stereotypes that existed in during that came up during enslavement just to dehumanize Black people. Some people are not aware or well educated or are ignorant that some of these things were just ways to get cheap labor and to force people to work and for economic reasons and all those things. So those kind of things still linger on, something like a haunted past or a shadow that is forecast into the future and you still see the shadow lingering around. So those kind of things. So that's what I would.
Definitely. And how would you say the division or the indifference within the church affected the participants, the members involved in your research study?
So for me, most of the people I spoke to talked about the emotional distress, feeling of alienation, like feeling not belonging, feeling unaccepted, and making them even question their whole being and asking, do I have to be here? And my work also looks at well-being. So this can affect people's mental well-being. And I remember one woman sharing a story that there is this thing, I shouldn't say this, there is this festivity or celebration. There's what a Pete, I don't know if you've heard about it, Black Peter.
Mhm.
Who helps Santa Claus, Santa Claus. I'm trying to use that English to know how to translate it properly. But there, where's what a Pete is this person with red lipstick and afro hair with painted black face who is more like a servant to the white Santa Claus or the white Santa Claus. So yes, and during Christmas, not Christmas, on 5th December, I should put the context very well. 5th December, the celebration usually goes on in the Netherlands. And I mean, some people say it's an innocent tradition, others say it's no, and all there's a whole debate around it. But I was just putting a context to when a participant told me that my daughter said someone, because their daughter won or after her, someone referred to her as Zwarte Piet. And she was offended. And as I told you, I deal with well-being. So when these things paint an image into people's head and make them ask themselves so many questions. It makes them feel like, am I at the right place? Is this where I belong? And this is supposed to be the church where they should find comfort, they should find believers. So it's like a community, it's a family to them. So it's like the family is not accepting of them. So it leads to a lot of concerns, a lot of questions, a lot of emotional distress. And some people, it even leads to question of faith. They begin to ask themselves, do I really belong to the space? Maybe I'm not even supposed to be like I have this discussion with someone who was like, white religion. I mean, I have a whole discussion about that and a whole paper on that about religion, about Christianity and its rules, and whether it's a white man's religion and all. But then it also, people's experience made them feel like maybe this is not ours. Should I find my own so that I can feel accepted? I will not need to justify that I'm human enough to have this experience and all that. The way I'm painting it is making it look too horrible, but I'm sorry, I don't know how to put it. I love.
No, don't be, because it's about belonging, and of course being in faith. I mean, when in church, you're supposed to be with your brother and your sister type of thing, and have a sense of oneness. But what you're saying is I'm sure, because the thing that I wanted to touch upon is about the faith. Like, with your participants, with them questioning their faith, did they even think about leaving the church?
Yes, I mean, it's not that some were thinking of leaving, but I had also met people who had left.
Yeah.
And that is not to take away people who genuinely wanted to set up a Black-dominated church. But this was also people who at a point, they were tired of justifying themselves. They were tired of proving that they were human enough. They had feelings and they had emotions and they could feel pain. And so some people actually left and formed. So it's led to formation of new fellowships. Some of them will not call it churches. That was my experience, that they will not necessarily call it churches. Like, I don't know why, but it felt like church was such a big thing for them to start and have a pastor and all that. So they would rather start a fellowship where they would pray together, where they would eat and have some nice time and share the Bible together, and feel like they had the I don't say power, but they had the authority to manage things in a way that felt more comfortable for them. So yes, some people decided to stay as well and make the change and like confront it. And quite recently, so I'm still doing this research. Quite recently, I was speaking to someone. She was like, we were asked to share our experiences at church. And when I shared mine, I was like, this is how I felt. Some people did not even know they were treating me that way. So some people stay to see if they can make the change because they are not thinking about themselves alone. And this person I was speaking to was like, this area I live, there is no Black church around me. And I feel like it's lack of, like, people don't even know what they are doing. So lots of education has to go in. And some people also feel like, I don't have the energy, like, to try to change everything around me. And I don't even think I can make that impact. And so, yeah, it's quite tricky. But yes, people leave, people stay, people stay and find another fellowship along it that they feel more comfortable. It's like when you have that WhatsApp group that we are all in that group, but anytime someone puts something, you have one person that you go and ask of your opinion and all that. Some have that kind of thing going on.
No, for sure. And then I know that in the article, it touched upon in terms of the churches have grappled with addressing their historical connections to slavery anti-colonialism. Would you be able to kind of elaborate on some of the approaches churches have taken to now acknowledge and reckon with the past?
So the good thing is that that's why I was like, I'm not going to paint everything so gloomy and bad and all that, that there are a lot of efforts going on. So there have been formal apologies in some of the churches, although we've seen in the Netherlands, for example, the big ones, the Prime Minister and other people, the king and other people, other political figures, let me put it that way, giving apologies. There have been some informal apologies in churches as well. And the last example, the previous example I gave you about someone sharing her experience, it wasn't just her getting up to share her experience, but her church was making a lot of effort to educate others for them to know more about what churches have done in the past and all that. And one of the ways was for them to commission research, but also let people within their congregation to speak up and share their experiences and let them know that although this is the role the church played in the past, some of the impacts are still existing today. So I can talk of a lot of research that are also funded but by some churches in the Netherlands to make sure that they know the role they played. And the good thing about this is that they are also finding a way to bridge it. So it's not like we want to know what happened in the past and then bye-bye, but to also say, this happened in the past, what does it mean for the present? And is there a way we can find reparations? Is there a way we can find healing? Is there a way we can work together because we are one body? So yes, there've also been some remembrance and some artifacts and all those things just to remember the process and remember and reflect and do better. So I've seen those kind of efforts. There have also been some, let's say, financial commitments where some of them sponsor students to learn like of should I say black background? For lack of better, or like migrants background to also further their education. They feel like this is also the little they can do because what they did in the past, they benefited financially and all that. So although they don't usually use the term, oh, we are doing it because we did this in the past, but when you read into it, you realize that they also feel the responsibility to do something and do it. Try to correct the wrong.
No, thank you. And hopefully, the discussion that we're having now can be for what others can be able to further talk about and to kind of acknowledge that, yes, there's history there. And it kind of, I guess you could say, poses the behaviors of what is happening today for some individuals. And what you said in terms of, people questioning their faith, it definitely has, and it definitely is definitely impactful. So I do want to thank you so much, Amisa, for coming on to the podcast and to speak about this. I really do appreciate your time, and thank you so much.
Thank you too.
Hoped you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please make sure to like, follow, subscribe, and write a review for the episode wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thank you.